Welcome to the Awakened Goddess Show, your source for inspiration, wisdom, and personal discovery. The place to learn from a diverse mix of mentors, metaphysical experts, spiritual leaders, and best-selling authors from around the world. I'm your host, Angela Wilkinson. Join me as I explore the minds of my masterful guests while they share powerful insights and easy-to-use tools you can start using right away. Now, let's tap into the energy of the Awakened Goddess and be enlightened by today's guest. Leslie Zemenek is a professional artist and a hand analyst. She's been reading professionally since 1993 and has read tens of thousands of hands over the course of her career. Specializing in helping those in transition, Leslie has guided clients all over the world in recognizing their unique gifts and creating a meaningful life. Many of her clients have gone to change careers, start businesses, and write books. Leslie has been making art since she was old enough to hold a pencil and believes that art and artists will save the world. Now let's welcome Leslie to the show. Hi, I'm Angela Wilkinson, and welcome to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show, where we co-create powerful, conscious conversations on the leading edge. I have a very special person with me today, and this is Leslie. Leslie is someone that was a big catalyst in my spiritual journey, and so I wanted to have you on today to talk about because you were so important in my journey. I thought, gosh, there are so many other people that I'm sure that would benefit from the wisdom that you have, and about us talking about our own personal journeys and how that has happened throughout the years. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So it's been like 12 years since we met.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And this is like the first time I've seen you in about 12 years. So,
yeah, probably. I've been hiding out a little bit.
Yeah. So we'll welcome back out into the public. So when I met you, we had met through some mutual friends. Mm-hmm. And then I saw you at the Portland Body Mind Spirit Expo.
Oh, yes.
And I went to your talk, and you were talking about hand reading. And, I never go to a reader after, at the shows. Mm-hmm. But there was something about you that I was like, I was really intrigued. And so I decided to have a mini analysis mm-hmm. from you. And oh my gosh, it was like, it was like so powerful, just those few minutes that we spent together. And I still have that recording today. Mm-hmm. I was actually listening to it earlier. And, then after that, I decided, hey, I want to get a reading from you because you do, what are they called? Astro
karma readings. So it was a system for reading the astrology chart that I developed that was a little different than traditional astrology. And I developed it to look a little bit, to go along with the life purpose hand readings that I do. Mm-hmm. So it looks for very, very specific things in the chart that might be like the fingerprint analysis that I do when I read hands, which is what did you bring into this life before you were born? Mm-hmm. And if I believe in past lives, and I know not everybody does, and I don't think that you have to for this system to work. You can just think of it as a metaphor for nature versus nurture. Mm-hmm. But in any case, that's why I called them the Astro Karma readings, because it talks, at least the way I look at it, it looks at what you brought in from previous lifetimes and then where you didn't develop certain skills. So it's the balancing mm-hmm. in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that reading... when listening back to these recordings, mm-hmm. right? Well, first off, I had to transfer them over because they were on cassette tape.
Cassette tapes, that's what we did a long time ago.
Back in the day. And so But I tell you, that reading was so impactful to me that I found myself coming back to it over and over again. And there were bits in there that I would replay in my head. And what's interesting is back then when I listened to myself, I was like so not comfortable in my own skin, right? And I was on a whole different path than where I am today. And going back and listening, it's like so perfectly lined up. Because there was one thing that you said about my hand analysis. You said something about the throat, the $1 million throat.
Mm-hmm.
And so, back then, because I was in a completely different place, I wasn't making the connections. Like one of the things you said was, I'm here to be a teacher, a writer, and a mentor in spirituality. Back in the day, this was when I was working in the relationship industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking back then, I was like, so what does that mean? And so now, I mean, this whole show is spirituality. Mm-hmm. So out of everything I think I've done in my life, that reading has been the most impactful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know if you ever get to hear like the other side, but
occasionally I hear how people progress and people come back and tell me, but a lot of times I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about life purpose, because, back then I was really off path.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was so in alignment, right? Mm-hmm. Now I really am in alignment, and things are much smoother. So I would love to hear about your own journey. First off, what got you into doing these readings?
Well, I was into this stuff since I was a kid. Even though we went to Catholic school, my mother was also into it. She would watch these TV shows at night with the guys who she'd stay up really, really late, because that's when they were on TV in the old days.
Yeah.
Guys who would make psychic predictions and things like that. So
in the late hours.
Yes, very late at night. And that was the only other time you could show bra commercials and things like that back in those days.
Yeah.
And we're showing my age here. So she got me a deck of tarot cards when I was a kid, and so that was always kind of in our house. So and I didn't know a whole lot about astrology growing up, but I was interested. And I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I went to a fair similar to the Body, Mind, Spirit fair. And there was a table there from this group called the International Institute of Hand Analysis. And I was kind of interested. I had read a few palmistry books, but they didn't make any sense whatsoever. And I stopped and I talked to the folks there, and they said, you cannot learn palmistry from a book. Mm-hmm. And I agree with them now after years and years of doing this. You can't learn it from a book, and after teaching it. So, and actually what they were teaching at the IIHA was not traditional palmistry. Mm-hmm. So Richard Unger, who was the founder, was very interested in palmistry, and he was also interested in other things. He had a kind of a strange, interesting mind of where he would go with things. But he, in his own spiritual journey, had some things come to him, and I don't know exactly how he got set on the path, but he started looking at old medical journals, and he actually had to sort of fudge his credentials to get into some of these libraries that had the only copy of some of these really old books.
Yeah.
And he would tell stories of having to go into these rooms with special air and having to only touch the page with a page turner and not your fingers, and wear gloves and things. And so he spent years reading old medical journals, because they used to use the hands and the skin ridge patterns to diagnose diseases and conditions before they had the modern tests we have now. And he kind of combined this with some of old palmistry, but what fascinated him the most were fingerprints because they never change. And I can understand, because after looking at fingerprints, I've seen people who cut off the tip of their finger and the fingerprint grows back over where the finger no longer is.
That would be my dad.
Yeah, I've seen a number of those. So it's amazing how much those fingerprints really want to be there, and they're, we now know they're encoded in your DNA. So he developed this system for looking at decoding the life purpose from the fingerprints, and also used data, believe it or not, from FBI on crime, and looking at fingerprint cards for famous people. And as soon as this was one of those things where, you just see something and you just go, oh, you just have that moment. And as soon as I heard him talk about this, I knew I had to do this. And I was working in restaurants at the time, and I didn't have a lot of money. And they were so nice. They really wanted people to learn this. So he let me sign up for the class on layaway. When I finally gave him enough money, I got to take my class. And but I also went to these monthly things they had, and I just soaked it up. It was just so amazing. I'd never seen anything like it, and I've not seen anything like it since. And then he said you have to read 100 hands. Once you had the training, you had to go out and read 100 hands. And so I just started reading my 100 hands. And it was amazing what people would say to me when I would tell them what was in their fingerprints. So there's 3 pieces that we find in the fingerprints. One is your life purpose. So the thing that we say pre-birth, you were the best at. You already learned. So your life purpose, a lot of people talk about life purpose. When we talk about it from what's in your fingerprints, we say this is not something you have to get good at in this lifetime.
So it's like your innate talents.
Your innate talents, and that's why I like to also call it the nature versus nurture, because it's your nature.
Yeah.
It's something you know how to do. It's easy for you if you get out of your own way. Right. And that brings you to another piece that's in your fingerprints, which is your biggest challenge. Or we would say something you didn't learn in your other lifetimes, or you failed at over and over again. This can also be the case.
Yeah.
You just didn't get good at. So for instance, if you were in a monastery for many, many lifetimes, your social skills would be underdeveloped. And so in this lifetime, in order to get your life purpose active and successful in the world, you have to work on developing your least developed skill, which in that situation would be the social skills. And then there's a third piece in the fingerprints, and this goes along with so many spiritual and psychological traditions that use the idea of force, the 4 elements, 4 directions, things like that. And in psychology, they talk about 4 ways of being. And so, and there are 4 basic categories of fingerprints, so it fits right in.
Oh, nice.
And perfect. So we talk about you can think of it as the lens through which you do your learning in this lifetime. And my teacher, Richard, called it your school at Earth, your major at Earth University. So, and the 4 are love, service, peace, and wisdom. And I also look at those as feeling, doing, thinking, and being.
Nice. Which
goes along with the psychological ways of looking at those things.
Yeah.
So I can share with you my favorite story about the life purpose.
Sure, yeah.
I love telling this story. So I was doing mini readings at a shop, and a woman comes in, and most people will come in and sit down, and I don't ask them if they have a question. I just start looking for what I see in the hand.
Sure.
And so she sits down, and she was an elderly lady, and I just do my little mini reading for her, and it turned out her life purpose was artist. And so she didn't say anything the whole time as I was reading, and at the end of the reading, I asked her if she had anything else she wanted to know, or if she understood it all, or did she want to share anything. And so she said to me that she was in the process of getting divorced, and as part of her divorce, she was getting retrained And all her life she had been serving food in a school cafeteria. And so as part of her divorce, they wanted to give her some employment, a way of making better money than what she would make as a school cafeteria lady. So they sent her to one of those traditional career counselors, and they do all those tests.
Yeah.
And she said that in the end of the whole thing, the guy told her she had to be in the arts, and she didn't believe him because she'd only been a school cafeteria server.
Yeah.
So
well, and a lot. I think this is an important point that a lot of people, when that natural talent that we have, we, because it comes so easy, we dismiss it.
Yes,
we undervalue it.
That can happen, right? Yeah. But I just thought it was so amazing that she didn't believe the traditional career counselor, but she came to me to find out what her true calling was supposed to be.
I love that.
I love that story because she almost fell out of her chair. I mean, when I told her her life purpose was artist, her body language was very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Because it confirmed what had happened in traditional setting. But I love that she was more willing to believe the non-traditional way.
Yeah.
Because she couldn't possibly believe that career counselor had gotten her right.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
I love that story.
Yeah. Gosh. So then tell us how your journey, because you for a period of time stopped doing the readings.
I did.
And then you yourself had like a realization about your own life purpose.
Yes. So my life purpose is actually artist, not healer. And I've always been an artist. I've been an artist since I was very, very young. That's all I ever wanted to do. And I would draw and paint. And again, like you just said, I undervalued this. I didn't think I could possibly be very good at it. And it turns out I actually was really good at it. So it took me forever to start showing my paintings. And it wasn't until actually I was working full-time as a reader that I started to enter my work in shows. And what was really wonderful at the time is that all the studying I was doing about spirituality and about mystery traditions and about astrology and the tree of life and all of the things that were so moving to me were all showing up in my paintings. And on top of finally starting to get into some shows, I would hang my work in my office. And it was amazing because clients would come in and fall in love with it and buy the work off my wall.
I remember that. As you're talking, I do remember that you had pieces on your walls, and they were incredible.
Yeah, so people would come in and find something really that spoke to them.
Yeah,
and so I, that was really the two. They worked so well together because I was doing a lot of teaching at the time as well, and it was actually even more from the teaching I was doing that was going into the paintings. And it was just this full circle of everything just sort of talking to each other. And then I really wanted to try and make more of a go of my life purpose, which is artist. And unfortunately, I found out I was allergic to paint. And so it came up right around the time I was turned 50. So talk about a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Because I had stopped reading for various reasons, and then I couldn't paint anymore. And I had turned 50.
Your world came crashing down.
Crashing.
Yeah.
It's like, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? So,
well, you had to have done your own chart. What did your chart say?
It's very hard to read for yourself.
Yeah.
So, yes, I do my own chart. Yes, I do my own chart. But I actually finally have started to go to somebody else for my chart.
Yeah.
Because it is really hard to read for yourself. Very, very difficult. You can't be, you're biased.
Well, you poo-poo. It's like the lady that went to the career counselor.
Right.
No, that can't be.
Well, or also you just kind of go, gosh, I really hope that isn't true. Or you see the worst version of things where everything has a good and a bad side to it. It's a matter of how you interact with it because you have free will. I'm a big believer in your free will. And it's the choices you make along with the energetic influences. So there is a tendency when things aren't going well to see the worst. There is a tendency when things are going well to miss warning signs in your own chart.
Yeah.
So
because you could be on, maybe you're not totally in alignment with your path. You could be like a little off to the left, and it still feel right.
And, I honestly feel you never in your whole life, and this is something that I learned studying with Richard and the fingerprints, in your whole life, you never actually get to the end of your journey. Mm-hmm. I mean, what would it be like if you got to your journey and you're 45 years old? What are you going to do for the next 45 years, right?
So, go play tennis.
You don't want to get bored. I mean, you don't want to just go, okay, I did it. And so, yes, you do get to points in your life purpose and where you go, oh, wow, this is great. I'm doing my life purpose. Mm-hmm. But then you may get a new, and you may have overcome your lesson. You may have done some real work on your lesson or the thing that you had the least amount of skill in. Mm-hmm. And you go, oh, gosh, I really, really made some progress there. Well, you don't get to rest on your laurels.
Yeah.
No matter what age you are, even if you're 90. The universe will ask you to then step it up to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's next?
Right, what's next? So, and one of my favorite things I say all the time is when I feel like I've, if I start saying that I figured it all out, take me behind the building and shoot me. Because it's like, what's left?
Yeah. So then you started, you found that you couldn't paint anymore.
Couldn't paint anymore.
And so then you went to jewelry.
Well, it took me a full year. I spent a year depressed.
Yeah. Like
really feeling like, oh, who am I? What am I doing? How do I define myself? So, and I, honest to goodness, even though it was a miserable time and a hard place to be, I remembered everything I've told my clients, the people who came to me when they were going through those things, that it's a part of a cycle. And everything I learned studying the Tree of Life tells me that dark place is a place you need to go to be reborn.
Mm. Yeah.
It's important. And in fact, they're essential. If you never go to that place, you can't actually get the great, joyous ahas that come from coming back out into the light.
Right.
So even though it was really hard, I just kept telling myself that, okay, this is a nesting time, right? Yeah. It's the incubation period. And I knew that intellectually. Right. Emotionally, it's still really difficult.
Right. Yeah.
So it took a while.
Kind of like my journey is back 10 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to see where we are now. Mm-hmm. And, I think we have to go through that process, that Absolutely. Germination phase, and that's what develops us to be the people we are now, to be able to step into whatever it is our purpose is, mm-hmm. our calling.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes you do something, even if it's not the right thing, or it's only the right thing for a short time, because there's a skill you're bringing in from that's going to go into the soup of the next thing.
Right.
So, and make it even better.
Right.
So it's not like, I'm a big believer in no regrets. I think everything you have done in the past, good or bad, whether you enjoyed it or not, goes in to making you the person you are now. And you couldn't be that person mm-hmm. without those things that felt like they were going wrong or weren't the right thing at the time.
Exactly.
Those are really important parts of the journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited because we printed my hands earlier.
Right.
And you were going to demonstrate on my palms, like how you read.
Right.
So I would love to jump into that.
Okay, so let's show the handprints, because this is something I do with pretty much every reading, except the minis. When I do the minis, I don't do them. But so this is an ink print of Angela's hands. And we do that with very rudimentary art materials. And the reason we do this is because, unlike your fingerprints, the lines in your hands change forever until you're gone. Okay. They keep changing. Nice. And we date them. So we put the date on them. And I have files and files and files and files with thousands of these that I've done for people over the years. And people will come back, and I have a filing system, and I go and I take their handprints out. And just last week, I did a reading for someone who I last read in 2003.
Yeah.
So there were quite a few changes in their lines in their hands from 2003.
Interesting.
So, and sometimes it makes it also easier to see very delicate lines in the hands that, especially as our eyes age, we can't always see with our eyes. So this is
you can see a lot of fine little.
Yes, you can see a lot of fine little detail from the prints. So we work with the prints, and then I work with the hands as well. So I'm just going to put the prints back over here.
Okay.
And I'm going to put on my
your
glasses because my eyes are not as young as they used to be. And I'll just kind of show exactly what I do. I always work with a magnifier and a good light. And I'm going to go, let's see both hands. So we read both hands. And the way I read is your right hand goes with your left brain and is more of your outer world. And your left hand goes with your right brain.
All right.
And so whether you're right-handed or left-handed, I read them that way because everybody's got that brain connection.
Sure.
And so I'm going to review a couple of things that I know I told you when...
What, in 2005?
Right, because there's a couple of the things that you talked about that were your...
the highlights.
The highlights that brought you and that you feel are really telling about where you are now.
Yeah.
So one of them are your fingerprints, and in your fingers, your life purpose finger is your left pointer finger, and this is associated with the planet Jupiter. So we would call it the Jupiter finger, and that's the finger. Think about when people point their finger at you; they're telling you what to do. So it's a finger of leadership. And so on the right hand, we would think of you as the traditional leader type. On the left hand, that's more of your inner leader. And so we look at that as living your passion. So, and then you have a secondary set of fingerprints that kind of come into play. They're not quite as strong as your finger of living your passion, being the teacher of the inner world, the lead, somebody who inspires others. But your thumbs, which have to do with making things happen. So thumb is the willpower.
Yes.
And it represents our throat, third eye, and crown chakras as well. So it's being in service. How we're in service.
Back in the day, when I was listening back, you said, and I hardly ever use this, you said that my throat chakra area was shriveled. So
let's look at it now.
I hope I'm not still shriveled.
No, actually, it looks very good.
Good.
It's definitely not shriveled. It's the right size. But what's really impressive on your thumbs is the middle section of your thumbs, which is the third eye. And if you look at your thumbs, your third eye is the chubbiest section of your thumb.
Well, thank you.
Well, I say chubby in the sense that when we look at the hands, when we look at the width of things, we say that's displayed most in the world.
So my mid thumb is voluptuous.
Yes, it's and I don't mean the word chubby in a negative way. I'm talking about in terms of it's your bottom section, the throat chakra is absolutely normal. And the top section, the crown chakra, looks healthy, but the middle section is
robust.
It's basically saying I'm using my third eye quite a lot out in the world.
Nice. Okay.
So that's what we would say about that, the nice thickness of it. And I'm sure that what I talked about with your healing gifts was the gift marking for the medical stigmata. Are you remembering that?
No.
So what you've got here... Okay, so not having listened to your tape, you've just recently listened to your tape.
Yeah.
Did I talk about being the gifted healer?
Yes.
Okay, so that's it. The traditional name for it is the medical stigmata.
Okay.
So it's 7 lines, parallel vertical lines under the pinky.
Okay. And is that just on the left hand?
It could be on either hand, and some people have it on both.
Yeah.
So here you have it on your left. You have some lines on your right? Not quite as many. It doesn't matter. You only need to have it on one. So there's various marks in the hands that we call gift markings. And gift markings are marks that say, when you think about the definition of a gift must be given to be a gift. Mm-hmm. So if you don't give your gift, it's not a gift.
Right.
It's just something that you have. So when you have a gift marking in your hand, these are big deal marks, and they're considered life purpose level marks.
Okay.
So they can come and go like any other lines in your hands.
If you don't use them, you'll lose them.
Well, that can happen. Or, at some point the universe says, okay, fulfill to that area. Move on. But most of the time, I don't see people lose their gift markings. But I do see a lot of gift markings that are in less than perfect shape. Which is an indicator that the person's not using the gift marking. Mm-hmm. But there's an even bigger indicator of whether a person's using the gift marking or not. Because if you have a gift marking in your hand, the idea of that a gift must be given on a metaphorical level, or on a metaphysical level, we say that you have a contract with the universe, a promise to give the gift. Mm-hmm. And so if you are not giving your gift, or you are using the gift improperly, like if you think about any contract in the worldly areas, there's usually a clause of what happens if you violate the contract.
Right.
So in your metaphysical contract to use your gift, there is a clause that says if you don't use your gift, the universe gets to... in readings, I often tell people, slap you upside the head. Or I've kind of started using a little gentler term. They come and they poke you to remind you. Mm-hmm. And they remind you, the universe will remind you by sending you an upside down, messed up version of your gift in your life.
What would be like an example of that?
Okay, let's think of a simple example. The simple example, the easiest one to understand is, I think, the leadership star. So that's a star under the pointer finger on either or both hands. And the leadership star means it's a gift of leadership. And if the person doesn't step into their leadership, they end up becoming the power behind the throne instead of sitting on the throne. Oh. So you might say if you were in a corporate world and you're a leader type, but you're not living up to your leadership potential, they might be looking at you going, can you get me some coffee? And then you sit there and you end up resenting that other person because you know you have better ideas.
Right.
And know better how to run the company.
Yeah.
But so your job isn't to sit there and be resentful. Your job is to go, how do I display my leadership skills in the world and step up into that role, kick that other dope off the throne.
Yeah.
So that's an easy one to understand.
Now, clarification. You say give your gift. Does that mean, is it something that we can use for like a business and
absolutely
be paid for?
And with that's a great segue, because with the gifted healer mark, it's of any of them, it's the one that requires you be paid for it. Because if you try to use it just with your friends and family, because the pinky area rules communications of all types, and we think of healing as a form of communicating energy. Relationships are a form of communicating energy. So if you are not getting something, usually pay, equal in return for your healing work, you end up with messed up relationships. And that's the flip side of the gifted healer mark. The gifted healer mark is actually, I call it the biggest deal gift marking you can get. It's the most complicated one, because that area of the hand rules so many areas that all talk about relating or sharing or communicating. So there's so many areas of your life where it can go wonky.
Yeah.
So the work of the gifted healer is to be a catalyst for change in others.
I got that.
Okay? Yeah. Catalyst for change in others. The gifted healer is not supposed to determine what the healed state looks like for the other person. And the gifted healer is not supposed to do the work for the other person. And you are absolutely not supposed to try and heal your friends and family.
Yeah.
because it just creates sticky, funny relationships.
Right. No one wants to hang out with you anymore.
No, you're always telling me what to do.
Yeah.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
That's just one way it can go wrong. Yeah. There's so many ways it can go wrong. Mm-hmm. So it's a very complicated, big deal mark.
Okay.
And usually you get the gifted healer mark because I said it's 7 lines. So I usually see it kind of come in if I'm reading for somebody over time. A lot of times it starts out where they get 1 or 2 lines, and then they have a few more lines. And all those lines represent your own healer, heal thyself crises. So that's how you learn your skills. Mm-hmm. So usually it comes from your own life where you've had to heal yourself to learn the skills to be the catalyst for other people.
So because I have, you said 7?
7.
That means I've been through a lot?
Well, 7 is the minimum you need to have it come in as the gift marking. If you have 5, we could say you're a healer in training. Or we could say you have some of the gift ability, but you're not in the requirement phase that comes with having the 7 and the universal contract. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you may be just sort of, okay, I can use it here and there, but
not really owning it.
Right. It's not I'm not in that place where I'm required. Mm-hmm. So that's why I say it's a big deal marker. And if I see people with a few and they're kind of wanting to do this more in their life, I often caution them, make sure you understand all the ramifications of this before you sign on.
I didn't know I was signing on to it. So.
Well, a lot of people don't. They don't know until they're already there.
Here I am.
And then they show up in front of me, and I tell them.
Yeah. So I would love to talk about the $1 million throat part.
Okay, so the $1 million throat is when you have a thumb that has a very clear bone that sticks out, right, at the throat chakra area, the base of the thumb, where it connects to your hand. So the $1 million throat is the gift of being able to relate to others, to be able to speak words that others can immediately relate to, that they can feel, oh, I want to know more. We see it in salespeople, public speakers, things like that, politicians. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily always come with, a qualification whether you use it well or not well. Right. There's someone out very much in the news right now has one who's not using it well, who shall remain nameless. I'm sure people can guess. But it's essentially that gift of being able to speak and people want to hear more. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So,
not an official gift marking, though.
Okay.
So it doesn't come with the contract.
Okay.
Just to
thankfully, because that one I probably would have been hurt by now. To the butt.
I'm glad you're enjoying today's episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. I want to take just a moment to thank all of the listeners and viewers who donated to the show, because the Awakened Goddess Show is community supported. That means it's 100% donation based. So if the show has been meaningful for you, it's inspired you, or has been helpful in any way, I ask you to support the show. All donations go towards producing the show, keeping it on the air, as well as keeping the archives available free anywhere in the world. So thank you for your contribution and everything you're doing to support the Awakened Goddess Show. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. You can go to theawakenedgoddess.com/donate to show your support. And if you're not able to donate financially today, there are many ways you can support the show. You can share the show with your community, subscribe, and leave the show a 5-star review on iTunes. Because without your help, the show wouldn't be possible. Now let's pick up where we left off. Back to the show.
So the kind of astrology reading I did for you was something I called astrokarma, which is not a traditional astrology reading, which looks at your sun sign and your rising sign and all those things. This is a system I developed after reading hands for eons and eons, because there have been books over the time where people try to equate what's in the palm with astrology, and most of them have not been very successful. Mm-hmm. So I kind of set out to do something different. And when I actually presented this to my teacher, Richard, he said, I think you might have finally done something that people throughout history have been unable to do.
Wow.
So I'm looking at things, I don't really care about your sun sign when I do this reading.
Yeah.
That's irrelevant in a lot of ways. I'm looking for karmic markers, and even traditional astrologers will tell you Saturn is the planet of karma. So even if you weren't doing this sort of more in-depth, just looking to past life types of markers in the chart, most astrologers will look at your Saturn. And they'll look at your 12th house, because the 12th house also is the house of karma. So your Saturn happens to be in your 12th house.
Yes.
So we talk about having a definitely seriously karmic Saturn for you.
Yeah.
People with Saturn in their 12th house are people who are come back to repeat a previous lifetime. So you have to do, it's a do-over.
Oh, goodness.
And it's in Gemini, which has a lot to do, means that it would tell me that you've been a teacher and a speaker in previous lifetimes. But the Saturn piece of it, you didn't get it right. So that can be the money piece. It can be all manner of things. And without doing another in-depth look at this, obviously there's probably some stuff that I've told you in your previous readings about this. But certainly, just to bring this back to your fingerprints and the challenge you have about the money piece, the Saturn in the 12th house would definitely be an indicator that this is past life stuff, and it isn't as easy to figure it out as if it were just another piece of this life's journey.
Right. Clearly, because I had to come back and do it again.
You had to come back and do it again. So this is big deal stuff. And the way we talk about the life purpose script in the fingerprints is that you know how to do your life purpose. You know how to do it. You don't have to work hard at it. You really don't. And if you're working hard at it, it's not because you're not good at it. It's because your life challenge from your past lives is getting in the way. It's tripping you up. So, for you, it's that not enough. In your fingers there, and particularly Saturn, because that's on both hands. So you have to find other pieces in your script that can help you get past that. You have to ask yourself really hard questions. Like, if I were going to go to somebody and they had the key to saving my life, how much is it worth to me?
Yeah.
Right? Those kinds of hard questions. Those kinds of hard questions.
It's true. Yeah, because when I have put out different offers, people would jump at it because I would price it so low that they were just like, oh my gosh, they were just throwing money at me. Right.
But you work harder and you're not getting as much money.
Right. It's true.
So there is something about, there's an old saying in our culture, you get what you pay for. See, I noticed this before we started the recording, that you have little affirmations around your house. So I think you need to write that one somewhere.
Yes, I know, they're all over.
So I think you need some of the practical ones like that, because it's not a bad thing to ask for your worth.
Yeah.
And here's what I tell other artists, because I have been known to get mad at artists who undersell. And I've had people tell me, oh, well, I can't sell it for that. And I've seen people with really complicated work, and they're selling it for like $20. And I say, are you having this made by children chained to a radiator in China?
Yeah.
Sorry if that's kind of rude and un-PC, but,
right.
That really gets the point across.
Right.
Because what's happened is our culture is trained to pay very little for things. But that's not good, because those things are being made by slave labor somewhere.
Right.
And what happens when you value yourself and ask for what you're worth, you make it possible for the next person to do the same. And that's a way of healing the world around that issue.
Yeah. And I know so many people that are watching need to hear this.
That's really important to remember that. It's really important to remember that. You make it possible for the next person. And when you are underselling yourself, you actually make it harder for other people to make their living as well. And that is really key. And another, okay, so here's another thing to think about. There's been a lot of talk about raising the minimum wage. And here in Oregon, they passed a law and it's going to get raised. And on our public radio station, there's all these discussions. And they have people come in who think it's a great thing and other people come in and think it's going to hurt my business. But all of the studies that have been done everywhere in the world, where and with individual businesses or with other countries or certain cities or certain municipalities where they've done this, what they have found is that when they raise the minimum wage, people have more disposable income and the economy gets better. So you have to think of that in terms of the bigger picture, in terms of healing the world.
Right.
That's a very sort of practical way of looking at it, but now translate that into the metaphysics of it. Really, really important stuff. Really important stuff. And here's another thing, and here's one of the reasons I stopped reading. When you undervalue yourself, you wear yourself out. Okay, my dog groomer, she doesn't charge as much as other dog groomers. And I tell her all the time, I said, you're doing my poodles, and they're the hardest thing. And I get 2 of them done for less than I pay for my own haircut. And I'm always yelling at her because she has to work harder.
Yeah.
And she's going to wear herself out. And then she won't be able to do my poodles or any dog.
Right.
So it's important.
Well, and really, it's like we have to support ourselves, not just financially, but emotionally, mentally,
because you get burnt out. So whether it's physically burnt out in the healer realm, it's emotionally burnt out, it's psychically burnt out, and psychically burnt out is way worse than being emotionally burnt out and physically burnt out together.
Yeah.
It can really take its toll.
Yeah.
Because then you can't help anybody.
Right. And then you think that you're doing something wrong or you're off your path, or then you start looking for other things. And
yes.
And then, this is a pattern I know a lot of people have, is they think it needs to be hard, so they go find something that's hard and do that anyway.
Yes. No, it doesn't. Actually, if you are doing your life purpose, it's not going to be hard. It shouldn't be hard. It's the work to clear the obstacles out of the way that's the hard work. And that everybody has hard work to do. It's not like you don't have hard work to do. But if you're doing it too easy, you're not doing your life purpose. Now, for you, just to bring it, one other thing, the other piece that I talked about in the life purpose script in your fingerprints is the 4 schools, the 4 majors at Earth University.
Yes.
Okay, so you're in the School of Wisdom.
Yes.
Okay, and you might remember me saying that. So, of course, that means you have a lot of it.
I'm full of it.
Right. So, the challenge in the School of Wisdom, okay, so with all the 4 of the schools, whether it's love, service, peace, or wisdom, there's a balance point. You can think of it as a pendulum, or my teacher used to call it the Goldilocks rule. There's too much, too little, or just right. Yeah. That's a great way to think about it. Too much, too little, or just right. So, you have to find that just right space of using your wisdom. So, too little in the School of Wisdom is doubting your wisdom. Too much is where you listen too much to your head. You think, because it's the thinking realm. Yeah. So you think to the point where you think you've done it already, even though you've only been thinking about it.
Yeah.
So you can convince yourself, oh, I've done that. But you've only thought about it. It didn't actually manifest in the world.
Right.
So your job is to find that place where you're not doubting what you know, but not overthinking it. And when I peeked at your hand before, I noticed something else in your hand that talks about overthinking. And it's in your left hand, and it's your headline. That, I don't know how much we talked about that when I saw you previously, but look at this headline. It goes almost to the end of your hand. And so the longer your headline, it's long and sort it curves a little bit, but mostly it's straight. It goes straight across. The longer your headline, the more time you spend in your head. So length is time spent. So the longer, and that's of anything, fingers, lines, whatever. So you have this. You can't see it on the camera, but you're hiding your thumb.
Oh, am I?
I'm watching you go like this. So this is.
I'm like sitting here like.
Yeah, that's what that is. That's fetal position.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, when you hide your thumb, it's fetal position.
Leslie, you're telling on me. So what does that say?
When people do things like that, or when they cry during my reading, I know I'm right on.
I'm holding my throat.
Yes, you're going, oh no, I gotta hide. It's hiding, basically. Yeah. But, I watch people's body language, because body language and hand language, hand gestures are really, they tell a lot. And, I can read people across the room without ever seeing their fingerprints or their, or people, in photos. Or things just from gestures or on television.
Yeah.
So, all of that plays into the whole big picture. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you.
No, it's great.
Feel free to edit it. But, so the headline, we call that headline HAL, and it's another gift marking.
HAL?
HAL was the computer in 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh.
I don't know if you saw that movie.
Yeah.
Okay, there's
time ago.
a famous line from that. I can't do that, Dave. Right? So HAL had... he was a super smart computer, not enough to do on this space mission. So he came up with an idea in his head that the two astronauts on the ship were going to sabotage the mission, and it was his job to save them, right?
Oh, no.
So remember that? He locked them out of the spaceship.
Oh, no.
So he would defy the astronauts when they'd give him instructions, because he had convinced himself he knew more than them.
Oh, no.
So we call that HAL. So HAL, that's the overthinking piece when you go way to the extreme. But on the other hand, it shows a lot of computing power.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of computing power. So,
well, I'm happy to say that I am much more out of my head than I used to be. I used to be locked up in there. Now, for I'd say the good portion of my life, I follow my heart.
Mm-hmm.
So
good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, let's just see. Let's find one or two more things in here we can talk about. Let's see this hand. Oh yeah, you've got a sloppy star under your Jupiter.
Sloppy star.
So I mentioned earlier that I saw a lot of people with gift markings that are, I can tell they're not being used, or they're still in development. So on your right hand, you have what's kind of, it's not super sloppy, but it's kind of missing one leg. So a star, in palmistry, a star doesn't look like a star like we see on the flag or something. A star looks like an asterisk. Mm-hmm. So it's 6 points that meet in the middle. 6 lines, 6 points, 3 lines that form 6 points. And it's very common to see a star where it meets in the middle like that, but 1 point is either too short or... So that's what you have. You've got 5 good points and one that looks like it's like the one that points right up at the finger.
So, and
that's the one I mentioned earlier, the Star of Leadership. Mm. So if you're not stepping up into your leadership role, you become the power behind the throne. And I gave a corporate type of example.
Right.
But it can show up in other ways, being the power behind the throne.
So how slowly do our hands change?
I've seen people's hands change in a matter of weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Wow. It depends. Okay.
Let's get with it.
It can go that fast.
Oh, wow.
It can go that fast. It's not the most common, but I have seen people's hands change that fast.
Now, what happens when you do like what I did and have carpal tunnel surgery?
Okay, carpal tunnel surgery. I'm glad you asked that one. It's a good one. Okay, so carpal tunnel surgery, generally the scar falls right on the Saturn line. And in old palmistry, the Saturn line was called the fate line or the career line. Mm. So most people get carpal tunnel surgery because of a work-related repetitive action. And most often, the employer pays for carpal tunnel surgery so they can go back to doing this same job that clearly, if they needed surgery, was the wrong job.
Right.
And so I see that often, is that people then are still not happy after they go back, or they're still having some of the same struggles with the carpal tunnel surgery. And I noticed that was, you had some little scar there. So here's how I read scars in the hand. Scars are generally, some scars heal, but most scars stay a scar. And so I read injuries of all kinds in the hands, and scars represent an old injury that, injuries to the hands represent injuries in life, to the area in life where you have the injury in your hand. And boy, I've got a few. If an injury was bad enough to leave a scar or a surgery, that represents an area of your life that feels scarred. I mean, it's that literal. It's that literal. So what that means is that's an area of your life. It doesn't mean you can't have success in that area of your life, but it does mean you have to do things a little differently. You may have to give yourself extra TLC in that area. And just to add a little piece around that part of the hand where the scar is, the base of the hand, not everyone has this mark, but often at the base of the fate line, people will have another curving line that comes around it that makes what looks like a little eyeball shape or a C shape or something at the base of the palm, and that's called an island. And an island is a stress mark, and an island at the base of the fate line often is an indication of, it's kind of like where we store our childhood baggage. The shoulds.
Yeah.
You should do this. You should do that. Don't do this. One of my shoulds, I was always told I could be an artist, and then when I went to apply to college, I got maybe you should apply for something that'll make some money.
Yeah.
It's like bubble burst, right? Except the bubble in my hand didn't burst. So those kinds of shoulds get stored in that area, and we make career decisions or life path decisions based on those shoulds that we heard, because why would they tell us if it wasn't true?
Right. They know best.
Right. So that's another area where I see a lot of people change, and that area opens up, and as they're kind of letting go of those old messages and say, that's not my voice, that clears up. But if you're having carpal tunnels, that's another thing I tend to look at is, are people still carrying their shoulds? Are they still operating based on their shoulds?
Yeah.
Shoulds and should nots.
Boy, our hands do tell.
They
tell on us.
Well, they do. And I have to tell you, after 10 years of not doing this, I sat down and did my first readings. It was like riding a bicycle.
Oh, yeah. I bet.
It was all there because this is such an amazing system. It's such an amazing system. I've never seen anything like it. And I've worked in tarot and I've worked in astrology, but nothing like this. Nothing. It's so amazing because it's literally reading our brains and our wiring. It's our wiring.
Yeah.
So it's just, I can't imagine ever forgetting it.
Yeah. Well, I am so glad that you decided to come back and start doing readings again.
Well.
Because, it's such a gift that you have, and so many people can benefit from it. So, thank you so much for joining me today. And, this was so much fun.
Oh, good. Well, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. I hope you enjoyed today's guest and got something you can start using in your life right away. For more spiritual insights and to listen to more episodes, subscribe to The Awakened Goddess Show at theawakenedgoddess.com and discover wisdom that'll change your life.